Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Pat Flynn Show, and boy, am I excited for this conversation. This has actually been something of a long time coming. Geoff Neupert is here with me and Dr. Jim. And Geoff, we've talked about trying to get you on the show a couple of times, and we I feel like we got this close, and then I don't know, something happened. I was talking with Jim, and we were talking about like just reminiscing about awesome kettlebell programs, and he sent me over a picture of kettlebell muscle, of course, with high praise. I'm like, you're right. We need to talk to Geoff. We need to reach out to Geoff and have a conversation with him. So here we are. That is the result of that. So Geoff, thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me, Pat.
Yeah,
appreciate it. Geoff has the all-time best FAQ answer in kettlebell muscle, which is, what is it? Only your mother thinks you're special. Right? Which I love that.
Yep.
I quote that to my students, right? So yeah, well done.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's a classic program. But why don't I would love to just start with a little history, Geoff, because we've talked a few times, but I'm not even totally familiar with all of your training history. But you were definitely one of the sort of pioneers in the early kettlebell movement. When did you first, like, what's the origin story here? What first even got you into kettlebells to begin with, and what did that look like? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what first got me into kettlebells is I saw like the Kettle Stack or something like that in the back of a fitness magazine, somewhere around like 1998, 1999. Somebody dropped it on my desk in the strength and conditioning room at Rutgers, where I was a strength coach, and I thought, man, that looks much better than dumbbells. If only we had the money, and we didn't. So I just put a little, stick it up there in a Post-it note or whatever you want to call it up there in the brain. And when I opened my own facility in 2001, or my own business in 2001, after we moved to North Carolina, I just saved up, and I saw Pavel's RKC VHS and book. That's how long ago that was. Is the VHS pre-DVD, I think. Yeah. And I got the starter set. So this was January 2002, and went to work with them. So started training my clients with them, and it was awesome. We used to bruise the back of our wrists and our shoulders because we didn't know how to tame the arc. Yeah,
he's still red.
Yeah. I was a bad bowler this morning.
Fresh off the clean and press. I love it.
When I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna feel ashamed. I'm meeting Geoff, and look what I've done today. I don't normally do this.
That's probably the pressure from all the reps, Jim.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
I mean,
it has nothing to do with poor technique. Yeah. So we used to do that, and it was a joke, and but it was the whole concept. My background, I did strength and conditioning. I was a strength and conditioning coach at Rutgers University for about 3.5, 4 years. Mm-hmm. Back in the late 90s, left in 2000. Saw the kettlebells as a unique tool to train specifically my wrestlers. That I trained 26 different sports, but my pet team was the wrestling team. It's because I wrestled there for a little bit, and so I always saw them as a unique tool to train power endurance, strength endurance, primarily the power endurance, strength endurance aspect involved in wrestling.
You wrestled at Rutgers, Geoff?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Oh, wow. Excellent.
Yeah. Freshman year.
But to be able just to show up at Rutgers, that's not a joke, man. So well done.
Yeah, it's just walked on. It was, and I was, like I said, I was coaching them. When was that? So I was there 90 to 94, and then I started coaching in 97, I think. Okay. January 97. And then left there in July 2000, moved to North Carolina. My wife went to grad school at Duke for doctorate in physical therapy, opened up my own personal training business. Started early 2000, like I said, January 2002. And I finally decided to go to the RKC in 2005 because that skinny Russian the evil Russian skinny guy, like, man, how does he get Grandma Betty swinging a kettlebell in 5 minutes? And we were using a I shall not name the name because I may be held liable or, in this litigious society, but we were using a protocol or a program from a company that was corrective exercise based. And the programming and the protocol, it was ridiculous. I mean, they had all these check marks that you had to pass through, and I exaggerate and say it was like 16 weeks, just to be able to stand up on two legs and do a deadlift. Yeah. But that's kind of what it felt like. And so I just between the banging of the wrists and the shoulders and the bruising and, getting Grandma Betty swinging a kettlebell in 5 minutes or less, it's like, man, I'm an Olympic lifter. I also have a background in Olympic lifting. Like, how can I not teach people how to snatch and clean and jerk this tiny little weight when I can snatch and clean and jerk these big weights? So obviously this evil Russian knows something I don't. So that was the RKC in June of 2005. And then just got heavily involved in the RKC.
Yeah.
But Strong First.
And then strong. Yeah. Right. So you were master RKC for quite some time. Then there was, of course, the breakup, the tragic divorce. And then you were, and then I kind of fell away after that into my own little world. Still like loosely associated and friends with everyone, but just never continued on, I guess, in any specific organization. But are you were with SFG after that for a while, right, Geoff, as a master?
Yeah, that's
right. And then you kind of like retired for a bit, right?
Yeah, in 2014, Tim Anderson, we mentioned this on the pre-call warm up there, and he and I were building out Original Strength. So I resigned my master status with Strong First so that I could go on the road, and it was like split my time between Strong First or split, and Original Strength, or give Original Strength all my attention. So that's what I decided to do. So I resigned that in 2014, and then 2016 I retired from the fitness industry and rode off into the sunset to focus on my real estate. And I thought I'd never be back. And then in 2019, I guess July 2019, I came back in after about 3 years off.
Well, it's good to have you back, Geoff, because now we can have this conversation. And like I said, you've put out so much good work over the years, and we just kind of wanted to come on and jam about that. Jim, now I want to hear kind of your origin story of how you wound up doing kettlebell muscle.
Well, so I am Geoff. I am a strength and fitness program junkie, right? I mean, so I am a voracious reader of I just love strength and fitness manuals, right? I mean, even just the old ones, the new ones, it's really my primary hobby, right? And I'm a professional academic, right? So I attack it like academics, right? I read everything, right? And I started training with kettlebells 2005, right? And I think I got into it was seeing them on bodybuilding.com, right? Okay, is that still bodybuilding.com?
Yeah, it's still up. Yeah.
It's still up. Yeah. And so I remember seeing the cannonball with the handle. And at the time, fresh out of grad school, babies, not a lot of money, and living in like rural Kansas, the commercial gym situation was not really good and all this. And I was like, I could kind of get one of those and get in pretty good shape, right? And so I got this just cheap, terrible 55-pound kettlebell. And, we've talked about this before on the podcast, and I lost 100 pounds swinging that sucker.
Wow.
Like, basically doing enter the kettlebell. Like,
wow, man, that's awesome.
Around with the Rush Kettlebell Challenge. And then when ETK came out, it was structured, it was simple. And I just, cleaned and pressed and swung that sucker for about a year and lost 100 pounds. Yeah. And so,
wow.
Then, I'm following up. Every program comes out. I'm checking it out. I'm doing it. And I'm big. If I buy a program, I do it, and I don't monkey with it. I paid for this, so I'm gonna follow. Yeah.
Nice.
And I was looking for a double kettlebell program, and yours came out, right? And I'll say kettlebell muscle. I think I started out trying to do it with a pair of 70s, and that went about like half a round of a complex, and just got owned by that thing. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm someone that my problem is my body wants to get bigger, right? It wants to put on muscle mass, right?
That's tough, man. I'm sorry to hear that.
I know.
Yeah, boo-hoo.
Dispositional skinny bastard. Yeah,
right.
My body will get fat or it'll get muscular, but it wants to get bigger, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's inherited my Napoleon complex, right? It's like so.
Gotcha.
Right? And so I remember doing your program. I stopped it at the end of the first phase because I was getting like too swole. I was blowing up. Yeah.
Yeah. Tough. Yeah. People say you can't get big just working out. Like the first workout, 7.5 minutes, 9 minutes. That can't possibly work.
Yeah. It can happen. Yeah. It can happen. Yeah. So that was, and I never did the really big one you had was it a kettlebell strong, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But kettlebell muscle is really good, and that's one I've gone back to over the years. And I just need a complex. I need a workout. I want to do a 7-minute workout and pay for it, right? I'll pull out kettlebell muscle and do one of those complexes. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So so Geoff, what are you working on now? Because I see you've got at least one new protocol out called the Giant. So I'd love to hear about two things. One, kind of what your personal training is looking like, and what you've been just putting together for people who are following you, and all your whatever. We'll just see where it goes from there.
Sure. All right. So personal, I do barbell, kettlebell, body weight stuff. I really like rings. So I'll do a lot of dips on rings, chin ups, pull ups. Don't tell anybody, but I still like doing the Olympic lifts, So snatches, cleans, jerks, squats, front squats, back squats. Love double kettlebell stuff. Love kettlebell snatches. Primarily, double kettlebell clean and press is kind of my bread and butter. That's my go-to, right? Go figure, right? So that's what this program, the Giant, is based on, the kettlebell clean and press. So is it a new protocol? Not really. It was actually in Kettlebell Express, which is a program or a book, a compendium of programs I released about 10 years ago now.
But by the way, Geoff, I have to lament that you take the best titles for kettlebell programs. I can't come up with good titles for kettlebell programs because you take them all. Yeah. And they're always the simplest titles: kettlebell muscle, kettlebell strong, kettlebell press. Dang it. Well, thanks. What am I left with? Yeah. So anyways, compliments to you for that.
Yeah. I don't know. Kettlebell 1 sounds pretty good. I was like,
what's next? I did get that 2? One. Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, take care of it. I'm going for kettlebell 3. All right. I don't know how we're going to work that, but
It's coming, right? Isn't that a thing?
What's that?
Kettlebell 2 is coming, right?
It's coming. Yeah. It's actually about to launch today. Yep.
Nice.
Yeah, kettlebell 3 will be tough because how are you gonna have a 3 kettlebell program? Like it's like a juggling thing, or
you have to start stacking or crazy
stack
with it.
2 in one hand, one in the other. Yeah. So
anyway, sorry, continue. But I just wanted to compliment you on your also equally awesome marketing efforts.
Thank you. Yeah. So the Giant is double kettlebell clean and press. You can do single kettlebell. I prefer doubles work because of my background in Olympic lifting. It's a greater systemic effort, right? Greater systemic demand, so faster results. You can get stronger. People always say, well, how strong can you get with kettlebells or a pair of kettlebells? And I say, well, how strong do you think you could be if you could clean and press a pair of 48 kilos 10 times? And that usually shuts the conversation down.
Exactly.
So that program is based on the double kettlebell clean and press. And I think what makes it different from anything else I've put out is, one, it's geared specifically towards guys over 35, and really it's more for guys over 40. And we can talk about that if you'd like to.
Oh, yeah.
But it's auto-regulated. So I give them a set of parameters. Like I give them a time frame, 20 to 30 minutes. And here's the reps that you'll use in each specific training session / workout, whatever you want to call it. But it's up to you how much work you do, right? So, and some people turn everything into Metcon and burn out, and then they quickly figure out that's the wrong way to go. And then they figure out how they should be moving. And so that's the auto-regulation part. And that's real tricky for some people who are competitive, because they'll go, well, Pat, how many sets did you get? Jim, how many sets did you get? And then they'll compare themselves. Yeah. But the problem is, like, you guys may be in way better shape than I am. So my general conditioning will prohibit me from accumulating a lot of volume, right? But it's all relative to the individual. So
this is why I always say work out at home and alone.
Yeah,
I really think that's important. I think you will make much better decisions in the long term. You'll get hurt less. You'll persist through programs better. Is do it alone. Do it where there's no showing off. Yeah.
I think that's smart. That's what I do. I just out in my garage, right? Because it's just me. And then it's my past numbers, current goals, and then quality of the training session. Like, what do the reps look like? What do they feel like? And
when I sat down with the Giant this week, to think about this, when I saw auto regulation, I was like, okay, boom, you got me, Geoff. I think auto regulation is really, really important. And this is something I bring up in my book, Ageless Athlete, a lot, right? Is I don't like to have a planned number of sets that I have to do, right? And I'd even like to be able to play with the load too, right? And I know like in a program like John, you want to keep this really simple and you don't want to have people have to own 8 kettlebells or something like that, right?
Right.
But I think you have to, especially for, gentlemen of our advanced age, right? Okay.
Gentlemen of a certain age.
Certain age.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't think, Pat, you're not quite as
No,
advanced.
I can't. I would have purchased the program, Geoff, but
I don't see any of that in your hair yet.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. I got a few strands here and there already. Which is,
in some jujitsu tournaments, they have adults, masters, and executives.
I like that. Yeah, that's cool.
I am an executive. I get a sense, Geoff, you're probably an executive.
AKA grandpa, right?
Yeah, I think I'm an executive too. Yeah.
Executive.
That's so funny.
Yeah. Flynn over there is a mere master.
Yeah,
So
merely.
I think it's important for executives to be able to have a bad day.
Yeah.
Right. That I don't, and some days, like the program might say go 85% for 5x5, and I don't have 75% for 2x3, and
Right.
I think I need to be able to have a program that's flexible enough that I can go in there and have a 75% for 3-day rather than 85% for 5-day, just so I can stay on the program. Right. And so I think, especially for, the older set, I think the auto regulation piece is really paramount.
Yeah. Let's talk about that, because even though I'm not an executive yet, I try to take very seriously. And I talk about this with Dan a lot, right? Because I think Dan would be okay if we announced that he too is an executive, right?
Well, he's an executive. Yeah.
He's an executive of, learning from other people's, training experience, and mistakes if they have them, right? Because we try to learn from our own mistakes, but like if I can learn from somebody else's, like save myself the cost, like all the better.
Yeah.
So Geoff, when you're thinking about training for men of a certain age, and of course we want to include women in here of a certain age as well,
Absolutely.
just of a certain age, I like this idea of auto regulation. What's the thought process here? What do you think the benefits are of approaching training in this way? Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a good question. I think I could probably back that up with a story just to
Let's do it. Mm-hmm.
Set things in contrast there. So I first learned about this concept. I'm scared to say this, but a little over half a lifetime ago, when I met my second coach, who was about my current age now. And I was coming off of a heavy Bulgarian training system. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Bulgarian weightlifting, there's a Bulgarian-esque. It's near daily maxes, multiple training sessions per day. I wasn't using that, but I was doing multiple daily maxes and across exercises. So heavy snatch pulls, heavy clean pulls, heavy squats. Can't say heavy for some reason today. And then I max out on the weekends when I go to the platform, because I was just training at the college gym on iron plates. So that sounds really good when you're dropping iron plates on the floor and they go clank, right?
The guy running the gym loves it when you do that too.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, she did. She loved me. She's like, you can't do that. I said, I have to. You don't understand. I can't put this down gently. That whole nother conversation. But he was a Cuban emigre. So he was on the boat flotillas up in the, what was that, I guess 1980. So he was
Kettlebell muscle, don't you?
Yeah, Alfonso Duran, great guy. He taught me all the basics. I'd say 90% of what I know about adaptation and programming was from what he taught me. Mm-hmm. He was trained by the Soviets, and he actually lifted on the Cuban pre-select team, which is huge because pre-select was the team that was selected for travel, but he was pre because he wouldn't vow to the communist system, which later ended him in jail and so on and so forth, which is how he got to Miami, because when Castro kicked everybody out, he opened the jails and got rid of all the undesirables. So he was on the team, and he would train 3-4 hours a day. And I guess, I can't remember if it was once a week or once a month, he'd get a vitamin shot in the glute, right? And he'd go down and pick up his paycheck at the end of the month from the local manufacturing plant, right? So he was a professional athlete. And so I had a professional athlete mindset, but I was transitioning from working, a 3/4 time job and being in school part-time. I was going back to do some pre-work for a graduate program. And then I basically ran out of money. So I had to go get a real job. So I went into New York City and went by the train into New York City. It was either 5 or 6 days a week. I don't remember. Sometimes it was 6 days a week, but my schedule was radically different. And so we had this conversation about, you cannot train like a Bulgarian. You can't even train like a Soviet. Everything you read in the Soviet texts, those were for professional lifters like myself, which is what he would say, right? He said, so
well supplemented professional.
Well supplemented. And yes, everybody wants to discount that, but listen, if you have kids and you have a 40-hour-a-week job plus, and this is what he told me, he said, and you have multiple mortgages and you have bills to pay, it is practically impossible to train, 6 days a week, 2 hours at a clip, and use exact precise percentages like you mentioned earlier, Jim. 85% for 3 sets of 5 on Wednesday and 75% for 5 sets of 5 on Friday. And he said that's just all that goes out the window. So that's when I first learned about autoregulation. And I remember one of the things he distinctly said to me is, when I write 75% for 5 sets of 5, I don't mean do 5 sets of 5. What I mean is do no more than 5 sets of 5. And that was a huge aha moment for me, because I was of the more is always better. Yeah. Right. Like I can do more. And it didn't matter what weight was on the bar or how my form degraded. And that's where I learned the valuable lesson of quality of movement, because every time I sacrificed my quality of movement for one more rep, that's when things would break. So,
yes.
So that's the importance of autoregulation is, yes, adaptation occurs in the same for a 17-year-old as it does for a 47-year-old, but not in the same way or the same time frame or at the same speed or at the same rate. Yep. Right. Especially not a 19-year-old or a 23-year-old who's got a little extra help. Right. So autoregulation kind of bridges the gap there. Mm-hmm. You set a specific set of parameters, mm-hmm. and you stay within the parameters, and then that allows everybody to make progress. Mm-hmm. Not all at the same rate, but everybody makes progress. And that's one of the things we're seeing with the Giant. Mm-hmm. What's that? Sorry.
Everybody walks out of the gym standing upright too. That's key.
Yes. Yeah.
So the idea here then, just to kind of give some specifics, is you're kind of giving giving boundaries, right, in the training program.
Yes.
And saying like, okay, we got to stay within these boundaries, but within these boundaries, there's a good degree of flexibility. And budget, maybe we could call it budget, right?
Budget,
that you can adjust accordingly on, days when you feel superb, which great. But Jim and I were lamenting, Geoff, I remember your emails where you used to talk about this. I didn't appreciate it at the time, where, people ask me now with 4 kids, they'll say, how do you sleep so well? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't.
Yeah, you don't sleep so well.
I just don't like, why is this an assumption of yours? Like, how do you get a good night's sleep? I don't. End. And like, you just accept this is like with 4 kids, like this is just going to be a fact of life for however I do everything else I can to try to get good sleep. Like I try to go to bed relatively early and, not stay up watching The Walking Dead or whatever. But, this is just a situation I find myself in. And because of that, some days I just don't feel like I'm going to get 100 sets of double clean and press in that day. But it helps to have boundaries of saying, okay, like here's kind of a ground floor, right? Like, and Jim and I were talking about this before, like no matter what, here's the minimum. I don't care how crappy I feel. I can at least do this much. Right. And then if I feel really good, then there's also a ceiling. Like even if I could go crazy, like maybe I shouldn't, right? Like let's set a cap here of my stupidity. So it sounds like that is that kind of the mentality that we're going for here, Geoff?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And usually my rule is when your speed, this is something Alfonso taught me, was when your bar speed drops and you can't get it back within a rep, you're done with that set. Yep. And if you go to the next set and your bar speed, or in this case, your bell speed, or if we're talking about body weight exercises, if the speed of movement, right, changes, then you're done with that set. And that's a really good way.
Anymore, you're over. Yeah.
What's that?
When it's not snappy anymore, you're done.
Right. Yeah. It's just a really good way to monitor, to auto-regulate your progress. And that's hard if you grew up with the 1980s, 1990s. I'm dating myself. Bodybuilding, go heavy, go home.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Blood, sweat, and iron type mentality. I think that wasn't that Dorian Yates's video, Blood, Sweat, and Iron, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. Dorian also tore a tricep, a pec, and a calf, and so.
Yeah, you read the biographies, right? Like you got to know what goes on behind the scenes with a lot of these guys, right? It's not all glory and glamour. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Have you guys ever heard of it's a little ebook that came out? Gosh, I forget the guy's name. Matthew is his first name. It's called Squat Every Day.
Yes, I've heard of it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So I did that. It's an interesting little odyssey to try. Okay. But only like responsible adults should try this. Okay. Because
yes.
you have to be able to auto-regulate. And so the idea is you are going to squat to, and scare quoting this, a max every day. Now you're going to work up to that. You don't do that week one. Right. And
right.
what he has you do, you go in like, no heavy metal music, right? What's Pavel's, no eating chalk, right? It's got to be chill. And like what he means by max is you're going to work your way up to a single that is the best you could do that day without getting psyched up, right? So it's completely chill, right? And like the first day you find what that is, like what would a single be for you that you could do on your worst day? Like, absolutely your worst day. And then you make that's kind of your benchmark, right? And then you go in every day, or you work up to what you do every day, and you get that weight on the bar, you warm up to that, and you do your single. If it feels like crap, you leave the gym. You'll be back tomorrow. If it feels awesome, put on 10 pounds, do another one. If that felt like enough, you're done, move on. If it's still great, hit another one, right? And I would do it over my lunch break. I would come home, like sometimes I'd like literally have like the khaki pants on, right?
Nice.
And I would go in and I would hit my squat, and it was completely chill, got routine. And I did it for, I'm thinking 10, 12 weeks. By the end of it, at a body weight of less than 200, I could casually, no spotter, walk in my garage and squat 500 pounds on my lunch break. Chill.
Nice.
But it took a lot of discipline to walk away from more reps than to stay in it, right? That was it. And it's just that hitting that every day, and just the little accumulations built up, and it got big. Yeah. But you had to discipline yourself to auto-regulate, right?
Yeah. That's the key word, discipline yourself, right?
Exactly.
The key
words. People often don't appreciate how difficult it can be. I mean, after you get hurt a couple times, it gets easier, but right. But certainly when you're younger, how difficult it can be to stop.
Yeah.
Right. So Geoff, for you then, what would kind of just, I guess, if you wouldn't mind sharing, maybe some just like somebody's, okay, this sounds like a good, cool idea. And of course they're going to go pick up the giant at the end of this conversation. So that's a given. But before the end of this conversation, kind of like a basic training program, incorporating, auto regulation. What would that look like throughout the week for somebody who came to you for advice on that?
Yeah, sure. It's 3 days a week, 2 to 3 days a week. It's really based on the person's schedule. I like having my clients dictate their timeframes to me, and not me vice versa. And then we pair it back from there, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of people go, I'd love to train 6 days a week. Okay, great. Is that a 6 days a week come hell or high water, or do you have things that get in the way? And you say 6 days a week, but if you look back at your training log, is that really 4 days a week? And so we do a lot of massaging, and it's kind of like what's the minimum that you can do, right? Mm-hmm. Brett Jones had this great quote probably about 10, 15 years ago. What's the minimum you can do and still make progress? Mm-hmm. So I help them find their max and keep it in that range, right? So I do have some people who can train 6 days a week, and they'll train 45 minutes because they have that in their schedule. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I can think of one guy right now. He does that. So 3 days a week, he trains for 45 minutes with the kettlebells. And then 3 days a week, he's very religious about recovery work. So he's got a specific type of recovery work that we've implemented for him. Mm-hmm. And
He's
So
probably
that,
a college professor if he has that much time.
no, he's, I think he works in biomedical, something like that.
I say
By the way, Jim, you're getting me in trouble because I reach out to these like people for the podcast, and you know they're professors, and they're like, I'm kind of busy. I'm like, well, my friend Jim Madden's professor, and he told me that if any professor says that they're busy, that they're full of it. So
that is my view. Yeah. I mean,
they don't
They're
like
doing the
that.
wrong things.
They don't like that line, Jim.
I'm at work. So they must not be tenured yet. That's the problem.
There you go.
Anyway, sorry. Continue, Geoff. Sorry.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, basically and then I give them ranges, right? So I like using rep ranges, 1 to 5 reps, 2 to 5 reps. Let's use an RPE, right? So one of the things that's been working really well for my clients is they'll do 2 weeks of an RPE. They'll use a 4-week training block, 2 weeks of an RPE of 7. Week 3 is 8. Week 4 is 9. And then we start the next training block at 7. And then we'll change the reps in there. And I allow them to select the load and the reps based on, how they're feeling that day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So they make really good progress. A lot of them PR routinely.
Right.
So I can think of one lady, she's about 135 pounds. She's a strong first Iron Maiden. She can do a pull up with a 32 kilo kettlebell. Yeah. And she's achieved that from just this auto-regulation thing. Auto-regulation is key for them. So that would be one way of us doing that.
Yeah, that's really cool. One thing that's striking me out this conversation, a theme that I'm pulling out here is that there's what people often think about is a sort of quantitative aspect of programming. What's the intensity? What's the sets? What's the reps? And I think what we're trying to get out here is, okay, that's cool. Like that's definitely there, but there's also a qualitative aspect of training. And this is important too. And some of these things, it's hard to put a number on, right? Well, because it's qualitative, right? Like,
right.
Like, okay, like maybe we could, measure the rate of speed in our push press, but like most of the time we're just kind of going by feel. Like we know when we've lost some of the snap or some of the juice here. Same thing with just like Jim said before, like once it feels like crap, like I don't know what that means in numbers, but I know when something feels like crap. You know what I'm saying? Right. So how important do you think that is that we, I don't know if we want to say that everything should be qualitative. Maybe some people go there. Like we do want some kind of like structured quantitative ranges and boundaries, et cetera. But do you think that these qualitative aspects have become more important in your training or for people of a certain age? I'm wondering what you think the balance here is for this.
Yeah, I love that. People of a certain age.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I use a range. I usually start at, if we're talking quantitative, I usually start at about 60%. Okay. Sometimes as low as 50%. Like I'm big for, I like using rep maxes for body weight. Mm-hmm. And then I start people at 50% and we'll run all the way up to 90%. And the loading changes per implement. Right. So my loading for body weight will be different than my loading for a single kettlebell, which would be different than my loading for a pair of kettlebells, which is different from my loading for a barbell. And the reason for that is a barbell will punish you. There's a lot of flexibility with a kettlebell. If you have limitations and restrictions, the barbell will find them. Not so much with a single kettlebell, right? Definitely not so much with body weight. There's ways to work around them unless you're going to do muscle ups or something like that. Then you'll probably find those restrictions pretty fast too. And it'll probably be on the other side of an injury. So those ranges change. But generally it's 60 to about 90%. And I use the 90% very sparingly. Most of our work is done in the 60 to 80, 85% range. And then the reps, depends. But generally, I like to stay in the 3 to 7 rep range. We'll go as high as 8 reps. So, and I have been known to go like 50% for 10 reps. Mm-hmm. But that's usually just to build some muscle, depending on the individual. But the days of 15, 20 reps, they're long gone. So,
Geoff, you still personally work out with barbells?
Yes.
Yeah. So I want to make clear. If you want to get strong, you want to get crazy, brutal strong, I think you have to work out barbells, right?
Depends on how you define crazy brutal strong.
Yeah. And part of it might be, if you want to get good at barbells, you have to use barbells. This is something I wanted to bring up too, actually. But I find now, man, my body does not deal well with barbells anymore.
Right.
I don't use barbells at all anymore. Right. And I mean, and it could be, I have a pretty long training age. I'm pretty high mileage with it. I think maybe people our age who, didn't play college football, didn't spend a lot of time powerlifting and stuff like that might be fine with it. Right.
Yeah.
But for me, I pretty much, it's all implements I can hold in a single hand, right? That lets my body kind of move where it wants to. But you can do it. You don't get too beat up, huh?
I can do it. Listen, I've paid my dues. I've had back injuries, hip injuries. My knee injury wasn't from squatting, but I almost tore a quad squatting. I had a slight quad tear squatting, barbell. So I've paid my dues. I took a season, hard to believe it was almost a decade ago now, but I took a season where I only did restorative work. And it was a long season. It was almost 2 years where I was doing daily restoration stuff.
That was sort of the original strength.
Yeah, that was original strength. Yeah. So that was, I think at the time we called it Becoming Bulletproof. So I did that from September 2010 to, I want to say April 2012, I think. And so that allowed me to basically restore all the broken parts. And then I kept doing it. You might get a kick out of this, Jim. So it's not something I share with a lot of people. I trained to get back into Olympic lifting after an 8 year hiatus. And so I was going to school, and I'd get up at 5 a.m. and go do loaded crawling, regardless of what the weather was, up at the park with about 200 pounds of chain, go to school, come home, work. And then in the evening, barbell work. So all Olympic lifts. So I was training like a professional athlete, 6 days a week, twice a day. I did that probably for about 3 years. So you can do it, but everything else has to be in line. Your restoration stuff has to be on pat. And if you had any injuries, you have absolutely 100% got to commit to fixing them. Right. Like I was OCD doing this. If you said, do you want to do that again? Probably not, Yeah.
So I think if I weren't trying to compete at jiu-jitsu, I'd probably be much better with a barbell now. Right.
Yeah. I
find I can be on the mat 6 days a week, and I can work out, 4 to 6 of those days too, but it's got to, so I basically train like a professional athlete. Okay. But everything's got to be in line. It's got to be in line. And for me, sleep is a big piece now.
Yeah.
And some of those workouts might be 30 minutes of just movement, right? And things like that, and make a decision, because I have to do that at that point. Yeah. And so I think you can do a hell of a lot into the executive class, but you've got to be really intentional about doing it. Yeah.
All the other stuff's got to, like you said, you're really intentional about your sleep. It's got to be in check.
Yeah.
So.
And I wonder if I can bring us back, because you mentioned earlier, people doubt how strong can you get with kettlebells, right? And you made the good point about, you need a barbell to get really strong, but depending what you mean by really strong, right? And I agree, actually. So I mean, I think culturally, because of the muscle fiction magazines and stuff like that, we just define strength now by like the bench press, right? Yeah. That's what we think strong is. And if, say, kettlebells don't carry over to a better bench press, they might, but I mean, if you don't see a big bounce to your bench press, by definition, that's not strong, right?
Right.
But I tell you what, if you're a grappler, that's a lot of strength you're getting out of that. Right?
I've got a story for you about that if you want to hear it.
Let's hear it.
I'll say that my jiu-jitsu coach, I could out deadlift him any day of the week. Okay. But the man will utterly overpower me on the mat. He is grappling strong in a way that I am not. Right.
Yep.
And I do think kettlebells, like for something like grappling, a lot of those sports, they do hit that much more closely than, say, a barbell does.
Yeah, absolutely. My whole interest in kettlebell training was because I had this concept. I have a greater appreciation for, BJJ. My son does it compared to wrestling. Wrestling, you've got 3 different styles. But I trained collegiate, which is folk style. And that was a 3-minute round and followed by 2 2-minute rounds. And sometimes you get overtime and sudden death. So the max these guys would train for, is 9.5 minutes.
Yeah.
So I fell into the barbell trap with my athletes. And there was a 119 pounder, Greg Fione, we called him T-Bone. And he went up to 125 pounds. And so the off season, he was 135 pounds. And we got him strong, like barbell strong, right? Like 390 back squat. So triple bodyweight back squat. I can't remember exactly what his pull was, his deadlift, but it was up there. I want to say it's probably about 405. Bench press, probably about 285. I want to say that. It's pretty close. I think he had a double bodyweight bench press. Feeling real good. Goes into the season, his senior year. I think it was his senior year. I remember watching him, and he gets pushed all over the place.
Yeah.
Going, what in the world? And this was my interest. This is about the time when I saw the kettlebell.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know exactly how I did it, but I somehow convinced my boss, the head strength coach, to get me the Iron Mind thick bar handles.
Yeah.
The loadable adjustable handles.
Yeah.
And we threw all the barbell work out with him. And we did nothing but unilateral and contralateral, unilateral stuff with him. So single arm kettlebell, thick fat handled dumbbell clean and presses, snatches, single leg deadlifts, all that stuff. And so we turned that barbell strength into usable mat strength. And that's when we make the transition. And that's why, I say, how do you measure strength? I mean, because grappling strong, that's functional strength. It doesn't matter how much you deadlift or squat if you can't pick up your fridge and move it, right? Or your sofa or whatever. And that's the beautiful thing I think about the kettlebell training is it gives you that grappling strength. Yeah.
Okay. You might be able to move a lot of weight like this, but what happens when you're like this now?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So Geoff, for you, how much of the restorative and corrective original strength work are you doing these days?
I do a little bit every day. So I don't do OS anymore. I do like an offshoot of OS. So I went on and did some other stuff after OS. But I do some every day. It's important, right? I don't know. Was that Dan Gable? It's important to do it every day. Or is that Dan John? It's one of the Dans.
Dan's got this thing where if he quotes you 3 times, the fourth time it's his. So.
Yeah, something like that. So I do a little bit of something every day.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. But the one thing that strikes me, and this is something that Jim and I have talked about, kind of the theme of kind of being a generalist, is a good generalist is something of a short-term specialist. And you talked about if you really wanted to get after something, then you have to get after it. Like you have to go all in. So when I guess for you, when you realize, okay, there's some issues here, you took that season, those 2 years to just kind of go all in.
That's right.
On fixing that. And that investment seems to have really paid off, where now you have your maintenance that you do for it.
Yeah.
But it sounds like that's kind of all you need at this point. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I don't have any issues. Right. I did have one issue about 2 years ago that I fixed. I couldn't get my lunge pattern to stick. Couldn't figure that out, but then I figured it out, and that's fine. But lunge patterns might be kind of important if you want to do some things like heavy Turkish get-ups, but
sure,
or sprinting up hills. But but yeah, I don't have any issues. I feel generally very good. I have 2 little rug rats that I have to keep up with, and and you guys know, you got kids, they just grow so fast. So that's my main priority for training and keeping myself healthy, right? So if I dial everything back, it's so I can get on the floor and roll around with my son or my daughter, and right. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Jim.
It's important to have something outside of your training that constrains your training, right? So, for instance, like I will not overdo my morning workout because I'm going to be on the mat that night. And I never know what I'm walking into. Like I'm walking into the whim of my coach, right? And it could be an easy practice or it could be a complete beatdown. And I don't really know when I do my morning workout. So I always have to constrain, right? Or even if you don't have something like jujitsu, it's just if your main priority is, say, being able to play with your kids later, and if I go too far with this, I can't be available to my children, right?
Right.
You're going to make a better decision, right? So I think you're going, like you say, like in autoregulation, it's more important to set the ceiling parameter, like what would be too far, than to worry about setting the too low parameter, right? And I think what really will set that top parameter, the ceiling parameter, is going to be having something else you care more about than just the workout, right?
Yeah.
I think that's important. And in the end, that will make you better in the workouts long-term. Yeah.
Right. For sure. It's a governor, right? It's
Yeah, exactly.
like the, what was it? The Dodge Viper. You guys remember when that came out?
Yeah.
They set a governor on about 180. It could go like 240, but the cop cars couldn't catch it at the time. So they set a governor on 180. It's kind of how you want to think about your training, I think.
Exactly.
Just
Yeah.
Say what you're saying.
That's a good point. So Geoff, now that you've kind of come back into the fitness fold, again, awesome to have you here. What's on the horizon? Yeah, both in I want to put that in two ways. One, both in your just kind of personal training. Is there anything in particular that you are working towards now? And then on the business side, what can we expect from Geoff Neupert coming down the pipeline?
Yeah, good questions. Personal side, I'm probably work to put on a little bit more muscle here. I'm not embarrassed to admit I kind of let myself slide. Are you allowed to make like public?
I hope so. You look great though, by the way. You look
Thanks,
awesome.
man. Yeah, thanks. I
both of you guys do. If I could look like these two executives, I'd be pretty happy once we get.
Yeah, I think it's very healthy to hear a fitness professional say, "Look, I kind of let it slide a little bit." Right.
Yeah,
I can get it back. Yeah.
Yeah, I can get it back. I tend towards I can't remember the ecto endo, which is the skinny one. So I'm like meso skinny, whatever that is. It the ecto, the endo? I don't know.
Yeah, we just call it the dispositional skinny bastards here.
Yeah. So I have a tendency I'm like meso skinny. So I put on muscle easy, but I also lose it easy. So when I was gone, I kind of took it easy and I kind of put everything on maintenance. But the problem is if you put everything on maintenance, you leave it there.
Yeah.
It's kind of like walking up a gravel hill. You know what I'm saying? You have this illusion of moving forward, but you're actually sliding backwards.
That's a good analogy.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. So that's my goal, just to put on a little bit more muscle because, as you age, supposedly, you get that thing called furniture disease. And that's where your chest slides into your drawers, right? You look like one of those old guys down in Miami Beach with your waistband up here.
Oh yeah.
So I think it's healthy to have some muscle maintenance or some muscle building goals as you age, right? Because there's two doctors. Jim, you might have read that book. Pat, I'm sure you have Biomarkers.
I have not read that one.
It's pretty interesting. They came up with 10 different biomarkers for why people age, and then the number one reason was they lose muscle mass, so sarcopenia.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have to maintain your strength, but after a certain age, you have to cycle in.
You really have to focus on the muscle, right?
Building some muscle. So that's where I am. I have an obsession with getting stronger, but I also realize the need that I got to go in and put some muscle on. So that's where the personal stuff goes. With the business side of things, I've got some private clients. I like putting out some of these little kettlebell workouts. And I also have this, and it's hard to talk about. It almost seems like a pitch or like
pitch it, please. Yeah.
Whatever, I don't know how to say it. Right.
That's always trying to get me to shamelessly pitch stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to pitch it for you, Geoff. If you don't,
it was a soft one over the plate there. So I appreciate that. So we put together this thing a couple of years ago called the sore knee solution. It was based off of why couldn't I not lunge, right? Like my lunge always felt sticky. Like, man, I don't get this. I freaking crawled for 7 years, like 6 days a week with 200 pounds of chain. What's wrong with my lunge? Like, why can't I get this? So went through and did some research and some tinkering and some dabbling and some twisting and turning and moving some parts around. Came up with the sore knee solution. So we'll be promoting that, and that's got a mechanism behind it called the P3 protocol, and we'll be working on that.
Awesome.
So that's pretty much it.
Yeah. So Geoff, and I want to make sure before we finish, we can let people know how to get all that stuff and follow you and all that. But Jim, did you have anything else that you wanted to any final questions or thoughts? Yeah.
So I like and stuff I've read confirms it too. Like there is a need for a little more muscle pumping, right? In age, right? For hormone reasons. It was Mike Webster, the Hall of Fame center for the Steelers. And then eventually the Chiefs, right? I remember reading a quote from him, saying like looking at guys his age, he was in his 50s probably when he wrote this. They're not giving their bodies any reason to produce hormones anymore, right? They're just, he's like, go out and chop wood, go lift weights, do something, right? Because you're not giving your body anything to recover from, and therefore it's happy to like fall apart, right? And so either it's recovering from something or it's falling apart, right? But yeah, interesting question I want to raise to you is, one of the things I kind of found not frustrating, one is I kind of moved away from the barbell was I was sort of out of goals there. Like I knew, I wasn't going to move my deadlift max a whole lot anymore. Right. I was probably going to start seeing that go backwards more than anything. Right. Or maybe stable. Right. And so like the sense of achievement to physical risk was getting upside down. Right. So for me, it's like, one of the things that keeps me going is like exploring new implements. Right. Whether it's like, getting good at double kettlebells, or now I use clubs and maces and stuff like that. Right. Or lots of skill-based calisthenics, things like that. And so I think one of the keys to keep in it, right, more than just maintenance, is not shameless acts of variety, right?
Right.
Learning to master new skills in strength, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty big. Yeah. More so than like quantitative goals with the old stuff. Right.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great point. I always said if I give up the barbell and kettlebell stuff, then I will go full tilt into body weight only, like the progressive calisthenics stuff, which has a big appeal to me. My daughter's a gymnast, and she's got a little bit of skill. And
excellent.
So part of me goes, I can't do that. I don't think I could do a 20-foot arm over arm rope climb with an L sit. Like she's 7 and she does that. I'm like, I don't think I could do that. Yeah. So there's some challenge there too, right? And
new skill, good for the brain.
Yeah, absolutely. And then what would be interesting, Jim, is to take those challenges, get really good at them, and then go back to the work that you don't think you can do and see if you're better. And I'll tell you why I said that.
Yeah, carryover. Yeah.
Because when I took that 2-year hiatus, I went back to the barbell. I had lost 15 pounds of body weight, but I could still hang power snatch 100 kilos, which was it's probably about 8 kilos over my body weight at the time, right? After not touching that for 2 years.
Yeah.
I did a little experiment. I had rows of doubles in my studio, and I remember going, hey, I wonder how easy these double cleans are going to be. So I remember doing a set of double cleans with a pair of 32s, 10 reps. Like, that was easy. 2 minutes rest, 36s. Now, that was easy. Then I ended up doing 4 sets of 10 with a pair of 40s, 2 minutes of rest. Now, I hadn't practiced any of this stuff, but it was all from the restoration work. Yeah. And the only reason I didn't do 5 sets of 10 is I was bored.
Yeah.
I just don't want to do another set of 10. Right. So I just want to go home. Yeah. Right. And then I remember I was tinkering around with some Zercher squats, I think, at this point. But I remember this was crazy. I did some heavy loaded crawling out in my backyard. I had 200 pounds of chain, and it's in front of me, and I'm, crawling backwards. It took me 30 minutes to do. It was awful, but I said I was going to do it. And it was the chain that just rained, so it was sinking down into the mud, right? Yeah. Which is why it took 30 minutes. So that was about 7:30. I finished that up, went and put my boy to bed, and then went over to my studio again and cranked out 275 pounds for 14 reps on the back squat, rested 5 minutes, 315 for 10. Back squat. Hadn't back squatted. I'm weighing 200 pounds. I hadn't hit those numbers in like 15 years. And I'm wearing a pair of Vivo barefoots doing it.
Nice.
Right. So I think a lot of these skills fill in gaps.
Yeah.
Right. You guys have heard of pattern overload, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm.
I think so many of us get caught in our training rut.
Yeah.
Where we like to do our thing, and then that thing ends up hurting us. We don't fill in the gaps, like you were talking about earlier, Pat, of being a generalist.
Right.
We don't have a good general.
That's a great
base
point.
of fitness.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be interesting to see after your
go back and do it again.
Your time with the body weight, right? Yeah. Go back and see what happens to your deadlift, because my hinge pattern was superb after that.
Yeah. That goes under the something said by the great American poet Toby Keith, right? I'm not as good as I'm not as good as I once was, but I'm good once as I ever was.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great insight from both of you guys. And of course, we're always happy to hear the benefits of generalism here on the Pat Flynn Show. So, Geoff, thank you so much. This has been an absolute delight. We will have to do it again for sure.
Yes, thank you, Pat. I appreciate it.
It's been awesome. Now, before we go though, let's make sure people know. Tell us a little bit more about the Giant, because that seems like that's kind of the newest thing you have out, where people can get their hands on that, and then anything else you want to mention, Geoff, of how people can keep following you and your work.
Sure. You can go to my website, chasingstrength.com. We might be having some technical difficulties right now, so it should be fixed though by the time people get there. If you want the Giant, chasingstrength.com/kettlebells/giant.
Perfect. And just get it, guys. It's awesome. Geoff does great stuff. We'll link it on the show notes. Geoff, Jim, thank you guys both. This has been a blast.
Thank you, gentlemen.
What an honor, yeah. It really has.
Thank you.